Hi, everybody. We're going to dive into our assignment today on the lottery, which is going to end up being a second reading with annotations. Before we do, let's watch this video to remind us a little bit about what happened in the story.
1940s America, a sunny June morning. Villagers slowly gather in the town square. Parents make small talk while children make a pile of stones. This is no ordinary day. It is the day of the annual lottery. What's the history of this tradition? How has it changed over the years? And what does it tell us about our darkest human impulses? Find out. Read Shirley Jackson's haunting short story, The Lottery.
Okay, so that should have given you a little hint or recap if you forgot a little bit about the lottery. And here's the actual text as we dive in. So, today when you're reading, you're going to be using the annotation tool up here, and I just want to make sure mine is working. Yeah. So when I highlight, I will have the drop-down option to highlight as well as add notes. That's going to be a really important piece for today. So I'm just warning you or kind of giving you a precursor like this is important. Make sure you understand how to use the highlighting tool on the iPad as well as adding notes. Before we do that, let's take a look at the annotation guide. So just kind of glancing quickly at the annotation guide, which you can find in Google Classroom, we're going to use yellow for setting. We're going to use orange for characters. We're going to use red, or I think it's red, yeah, for problem or conflict. We're going to use purple for important or impactful actions of the characters. And we're going to be using blue for the resolution. And then lingering questions. If you don't understand a part or you're wanting to ask a question, I would say put that in green. And questions are when it's really important to include notes, as well as purple. Purple should always include a note. So let me just actually add that on here. Please include a note, and please include a note. Why? Because both of those need a little added explanation as to why you're highlighting them. Okay, so let's kind of dive in. Before we do, let me just stop for a minute and think, okay, which of these am I probably going to be using most often, especially in the beginning? Well, at the start of the story, we usually get introduced to the settings. So I know I'm probably going to have yellow be a pretty important color. And then also at the start of this story, we're of course going to get some characters, right? So let's definitely think about using orange, especially at the start. All right, so let's go back to the text. Let's X out of here and let's start reading. The morning of June 27th was clear and sunny with the fresh warmth of a full summer day. The flowers were blossoming profusely and the grass was richly green. I'm already getting some really powerful details about setting. Remember, setting is yellow, so I'm going to create that highlight. Oops, I made a little mistake here, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep going. The people of the village began to gather in the square between the post office and the bank around 10 o'clock in some towns, there were so many people that the lottery took 2 days and had to be started on June 26th. But in this village, where there were only about 300 people, the whole lottery took less than 2 hours. So it could begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and still be through in time to allow the villagers to get home for noon dinner. So this is all important information about the setting, right? We have the people gathering. So we have a location in the square between the post office and the bank, and we have a time. I'm going to really purposely cut it off there because we're not caring so much about other people's lotteries and other people's towns. We're caring about our town. So I'm going to create this highlight and I'm going to continue on. Was there anything else in this paragraph that mentioned anything having to do with Setting. Only about 300 people in the town. So I think that that's an important detail about the setting. I'm going to create this highlight, and this is the sort of detail I'm looking for. It could begin at 10 o'clock in the morning. This is all time, which has to do with setting. The lottery could take place at 10 o'clock in the morning and still be through in time to allow the villagers to get home for noon dinner, which is, I guess, what they're calling lunch. Okay. The children assembled first, of course. School was recently over for the summer, and the feeling of liberty sat uneasily on most of them. They tended to gather together quietly for a while before they broke into boisterous play, and their talk was still of the classroom and the teacher, of books and reprimands. Bobby Martin had already stuffed his pockets full of stones, and the other boys followed his example, selecting the smoothest and roundest stone. Bobby and Harry Jones and Dickie Delacroix, the villagers pronounced this name Delacroix, eventually made a great pile of stones in one corner of the square and guarded it against the raids of the other boys. The girls stood aside, talking among themselves, looking over their shoulders at the boys, and the very small children rolled in the dust or clung to the hands of their older brothers or sisters. Sometimes I like to do annotation this way. I like to read a whole paragraph and then go back in. So I'm seeing some important information, like this is a character introduction, and I remember from my annotation guide that if I'm introduced to a new character, I want to make that orange. So I'm going to create that highlight. And then I'm also going to ask myself, is there any important information if I go to my annotation guide? Important or impactful actions of the characters? Yeah, so I think that this is important. We're sort of cheating and we're doing this on purpose. We already read this story. So we know when something's going to be important, and that's kind of a nice glimpse we have into the story. Bobby Martin had already stuffed his pockets full of stones. To me, that feels really important. And it's telling us something really powerful about Bobby, mainly that he's ready to go and he's ready to roll for the lottery, right? And the other boys followed his example. Okay, this also feels really important. So Bobby is pretty much a leader, and these boys, they are following suit. All right, so this is an important action a character's taking. Bobby and Harry Jones and Dickie Delacroix. So I'm going to highlight these two characters because these are new characters, but I don't want to do this. Oh well, that's okay. If it's not perfect, it's not perfect. What color would this be because it's two new characters? Orange. Okay. Villagers pronounced his name Delacroix, eventually made a pile of stones in one corner of the square and guarded it against the raids of other boys. The girls stood aside, talking among themselves, looking over their shoulder at the boys, and the very small children rolled in the dust or clung to the hands of their oldest brother and sister. Recording.